So with that, it is wonderful to have you here, Ella. Thank you.
Thank
The
you.
first question that I'd like to ask, which comes from families a great deal, is should I tell my kids about genetic kidney disease in our families?
Sure. And I think the short answer is yes. We would recommend an open communication in families about genetic kidney disease as it impacts the family. But I think it's really important to start by saying that ultimately a parent or a family are their own experts in terms of how their family functions and how they communicate. So whilst you've already said it, but whilst we can talk in general terms, I think it's important that parents or adults in families trust their own instincts about this, and also bear in mind that there's no right or wrong. And what we're about to talk about are sort of some tips or things that we've learned over time and experience, but there is no right or wrong here.
So from your experience, Ella, what typically holds people back from talking to their kids?
I think there's a few different things that can play on people's minds. I think parents have a natural instinct to want to protect their children from anything that's difficult or painful. And so that plays a factor sometimes, plays a role sometimes. I think people also feel unsure sometimes about how to do it or when or, the sort of specifics of thinking about it. I think sometimes as well we see with genetic conditions that run in families that there can be a real sense of parental guilt sometimes about the idea of potentially having passed something down to a child, and that applies to grandparents as well. And I think it's really important to hold as much as you can the knowledge that no one is ever to blame for the genes that they pass down in their family, because it's something that we have absolutely no control over.
That's really important, Ella. So talking about your initial recommendation about talking to kids about genetic kidney disease, why do you think that might be beneficial?
Well, I think that children are often a lot more cluey or switched on than we give them credit for. So they'll often have a sense or an idea about what is happening, even if it hasn't been openly discussed. And actually, if they sense that something's a secret or something that is difficult in the family or likely to cause adults distress, that can stop them from asking questions. And I think when that happens or when things aren't discussed openly, children will often make things worse in their minds than they truly are. They'll imagine the worst. And so in thinking about talking to children about these things, it's actually, I like to think of it as a form of protection in talking about the fact that parents often want to protect their children. Being open is a way of protecting them from imagining something that isn't true. And I think, we may not realise that children often overhear things or they hear half a story and then they fill in the gaps. So if you have an open dialogue with your child where they feel that they can ask you these questions, that can sort of allay some of those worries and stop the misinformation from happening.
Absolutely. Thinking about going towards or thinking about a conversation, having that conversation with your children, why is it important to prepare yourself for these discussions?
I think it's always helpful whenever you are thinking about having a difficult or uncomfortable discussion to prepare, because it helps you get straight in your own mind what you want to say. And in this case as well, I think if there are things that you don't know or don't understand, it allows you to think about that in advance rather than being caught off guard. But I also think that in thinking about those things and preparing for a conversation, it's also okay not to have all the answers, and to feel safe to say that to your children. I don't know, but we can look it up together, or we can ask the doctor next time we see them. And both of those things, you know, can take away some of the worry for you about feeling you need to know everything all at once, and also for the child to then feel, you know, because they obviously trust you and look up to you. And if mum or dad or parent or grandparent doesn't necessarily know all the answers, that's okay. And I think that's reassuring for a child too.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, that finishes our first section. So please stay with us and join us for our next video about preparing to talk to kids about genetic kidney disease.